What up, YouTube? It's me, Johnny, back at it again with another video. And if you are a fan of the NBA or somebody who keeps up with the sport, you have probably heard of Nikola Jokic. After winning his first championship last year, and this year him and the Denver Nuggets look to be the favorites, there's been a lot of talk about where he ranks all time as far as centers are concerned in the basketball community. Now, I think this is a fair question to ask, so I want to talk about and take a look at where I believe Jokic should rank all time. But before I dive into the video, please, for me, if you're enjoying the content you're listening to here, like the video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell so that way anytime a new video comes out, you will be alerted. Also, if you happen to be interested in other things that I might be talking about, check out my podcast that can be found anywhere podcasts are being played by searching for the same name as the YouTube page. Now, without further ado, let me dive into this. So first, I want to give my list of who I believe are the 10 greatest centers of all time. And yes, the list that should be popping up on the screen now is them in the order that I actually have them ranked. Feel free to let me know in the comments if there was a center that I left off the list that you feel should be on the list. But I believe that, these are the 10 greatest centers of all time, in my opinion. For anyone that might be a first-time listener of mine when it comes to the way I rank players when we talk about all time, I normally do it based on two things. The first is, what the player was able to accomplish in their career, overall accomplishments. And then the second is just how good a player they actually are. And those are normally based on, 4 criteria which boils down to, scoring, defense, playmaking, and then one-on-one ability. So, for example, I can make a case that skill-wise as a player, Hakeem Olajuwon was actually a greater player than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but I don't have him ranked above him all time due to the accomplishments that Kareem was able to amass over his NBA playing career, combined, of course, with the skill set that he had. Now, to get to Jokic, let's talk about what he has accomplished so far as a player. He's a 2-time league MVP, a 1-time NBA champion, finals MVP. He's a 5-time All-Star. He's a 3-time first-team All-NBA selection. And, of course, he has 2 second-team All-NBA selections as well. And he was first-team All-Rookie. Yes, I know that he also has a Western Conference MVP there, but since that actually just became a thing a couple of years ago, I'm actually not going to use that in counting towards his rankings, since the older players that made my list of top 10 centers, that award wasn't around for them to win back in the day, so just going to leave that off. With that said, Jokic has done some amazing stuff in his career, and he's still playing. He's only 28 years old and in the heart of his prime, so there's a lot more years that he has, to actually accomplish more. Now, let's talk about his skill set that he actually brings to the basketball court as a player, and I look at his scoring, and Jokic can do it all. He's a great to excellent scorer out of the post. He can shoot the ball well and hit, for his size. And he can score on the perimeter pretty great also. Oh, and as far as transition goes, he's not the best, of course, I've seen as far as centers, only averaging about 1.8 points per game this particular season when it comes to transition. And for his career, he only averages about 1.4 points. However, I don't think that's too bad for, a center. His defense doesn't lack effort, but I'll just say he's not known for his defense. Hence, no all-team defensive selections or even mentions for that matter. His playmaking, I believe, is actually second to none when it comes to, passing. Yes, he's a better passer as a center than, let's say, a Vlade Divac or a Denis Sabonis, since I know sometimes people bring up those particular centers as passers, and I believe Jokic is much better than all of them. Matter of fact, he's probably the greatest passing center of all time. They were, of course, good, but not as good as Jokic. 1-on-1. If he needs a basket, he can create his own shot to get it, so he's very good there too. We saw a lot of this during the playoff run, especially in the finals when they were playing the Miami Heat. Also, even when they played the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference Finals last year. Now, let's take a look back at that list of centers and rank him, starting at number 10. So I can tell you for me already that he's better than 10 through 8. So I don't think, we actually have to get into debating there. I think he should be slid solidly here, I believe, at number 8. And to me, that's where the debate starts on this list, and that's with David Robinson. When we actually take a look at both of these players' stats, you will see that both players are actually pretty comparable with one another in a lot of areas. Even though with David Robinson, I know he has 2 titles to Jokic's 1, but David was not the best player on his team for either one of those titles, which to me is a big deal when comparing the 2 players. When you look at them player for player, yes, David is better than Jokic on defense. However, when you take a look at other categories, I think Jokic is better in the other 3 when it comes to scoring, playmaking, and even one-on-one game. When you put all of that together, that gap that David has that's, over Jokic in defense isn't big enough to cover the massive gap, in my opinion, between them on offense, plus the fact that Jokic was the best player on his team when he won his title. So yes, I'm going to actually give this to Jokic here in the edge when it comes to David Robinson. Now, let's take a look at who's in number 6, and that's Mr. 454 in Moses Malone. Comparing their career averages, you will see that though Moses does have one more MVP than Jokic, and Moses is a better rebounder, outside of those 2 things, Jokic beats him almost across the board in every single metric. Like we talked about when we compared, Jokic to David Robinson, David was a much better defender than Jokic. And, Moses isn't as good as a defender, in my opinion, as David Robinson was, but he's, obviously still better than Jokic. Matter of fact, to save myself time, every center on this list is better than Jokic when it comes to defense. Maybe the only one that you can maybe debate is George Mikan, but, I'll just say that he's maybe better than Jokic when it comes to defense. Even with Moses having, of course, the defensive edge and the rebounding edge slightly, I would still rank Jokic over him. Jokic doesn't have all the total overall, counting numbers yet, but when you look at who's the better player, the only thing, again, Moses does better when I talk about those 4 categories is defense, and that's about it. So yeah, I have Jokic ranked above him, so he is now in the 6th slot, in my opinion. Looking at the top 5 centers that I have, much like those bottom 3 that I mentioned in George Mikan, Patrick Ewing, and Willis Reed, I don't actually think there's a debate to be had here for Jokic being in the top 5, at least not yet. I mean, Kareem, Mr. Russell, Shaq, Hakeem, and Wilt, I just in good faith cannot make a case to have Jokic ranked above any of them currently. He hasn't accomplished more overall than any of those guys on the basketball court yet, and even when you stack them player for player, Jokic might beat out someone like Bill Russell, and I would say maybe tie others like Hakeem, Shaq, and Kareem. But when you put it all together, he just doesn't have enough to outrank them. For me, at this current present moment, subject to change later, of course, depending on what Jokic does for the rest of his career, Jokic is 6th on this list of greatest centers of all time. At the end of his playing career, of course, we could revisit, take a look, see if he's higher maybe on the list, depending on his accomplishments and, if he continued to play the way he's currently playing. But do you think I have him ranked pretty accurately all time, or do you think I'm completely off base? Let me know what you think in the comments. But with that said, until the next one, I hope you all have a good one, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace.